So with 12 arrivals this summer, Portsmouth and John Mousinho embark on their 7th season in League One, with the expectation once again being promotion. In the episode today, we are going to identify the key ingredients to this Portsmouth rebuild. We're then going to analyse every single transfer made by Pompey this summer, or 12 of them. We're then going to assess and analyse the current squad in its current form, looking at squad depth. And then finally have a 10-15 minute conversation with the very popular Jack Hancock, or Hancock Analysis on Twitter, to tactically break down exactly how this Pompey side could set up for this upcoming season. Lots to get into. Of course, Portsmouth fans, get in the comments down below and start the conversation. How are you feeling ahead of the new season? How are those confidence levels looking? I think it's going to be a really interesting campaign. Let's begin and not take any more of your time away from you and discuss the key ingredients to this Portsmouth rebuild occurring this summer. So I've narrowed it down to 4 key ingredients: culture, integration, identity, and patience. Beginning with culture, it's Tom's favourite word, but a positive culture is pivotal in a successful side. A squad with a positive atmosphere really could be the difference between a winning and losing side, or a successful or unsuccessful side. It's really that important. So a happy camp, as they usually say, is a winning camp. When it comes to integration, it almost naturally follows on from culture. Integration is key when a positive culture is created. With so many additions over the summer transfer window, this has been made more difficult, but I'd say even more important. Pre-season has been one of the most important the football club has ever experienced. Of course, this is John Mousinho's first ever pre-season as a football manager, so very difficult, but I'd say, like I just mentioned there, just as and even more important. Thirdly, I've gone with identity. A clear identity has been lacking for a long time at Portsmouth, and John Mousinho will be desperate to change that trend. Sides that have been promoted from League One and most divisions across the Football League have a clear style of play and execute their key principles effectively and consistently. When a system and positive identity has been mastered, the chance of winning is increased. As we know, winning will be the only trail to promotion for any football club, and in particular, in this case, Portsmouth. And finally, I've gone with patience. In simple terms, rebuilds and projects do take time. Pompey fans won't want to hear that, but it will take time. It still can be achieved in a season, I'm not saying that, but it will require an element of patience. Pompey fans will have to find out how long that's going to take. At times, emotions will be tested and frustrations will creep in, but when you look at Mousinho's long-term intentions, trust will be extremely important. For me, those are the key ingredients to this Portsmouth rebuild being successful. Really interesting. Let me know your key ingredients in the comments below if you agree or disagree, but I've gone with those 4 there. Let's move on to breaking down every Portsmouth incoming so far during the summer transfer window. So far, Portsmouth have recruited 12 new players, 10 outfield players and 2 goalkeepers. John Mousinho and Richard Hughes have been extremely busy. Let's break down every single one of those incomings. As you can see on the screen now, this is transfermarket.co.uk, listing every transfer made by Pompey this summer. Now, straight away, it's quite a long list. We did this video for Derby. It was a shorter list for them. Portsmouth, you've made this a little bit more difficult to cram onto one page, but you've just about managed it. You can see lots of names there. And I wanted to look at some initial points. First and foremost, age profile. There's a real blend of players in their prime years, approaching their prime years, and younger players looking to develop. I look at Gavin Whyte at 27. You'd say he's reaching those prime years. Then you've got players like Jack Sparks, who's 22. You've got players like Yengi, who are 24, still fairly young there. Scully, 24. Sadie, even younger at 21. Stevenson, 26. Will Norris, the goalkeeper, again, not really hitting his prime at 29. Just about, some would argue. A young goalkeeper in Ron Schofield at 23. Plenty of work there to be a second choice goalkeeper right now, but certainly can be moulded and developed into being a long-term option for Portsmouth. Terry Devlin, another good example, 19, somebody who right now probably won't play every minute, but will be a fantastic young player you'd like to think in the future with the right development and coaching. So you've got a really interesting blend of age profile there. Like I say, that's really important when we look at squad building, and this all comes down to squad building, and Hughes and Mousinho have been extremely busy. Did we think that 12 new players were going to come in? I think we knew that it was going to be a rebuild. Pompey fans knew it was going to be a long-term strategy and recruitment process all in one window. It's pleasing, it's positive, but like I said earlier with the key ingredients, integration will be the big one. Secondly, I'm looking at the 4 fees, the 7 frees and the 1 loan. It's very clear Mousinho and the Pompey ownership are looking to invest into a long-term squad. They want to recoup fees down the line and don't become loan reliant. You look at players like Kamara being the only loan addition. He's the only player that's going to be leaving at the end of the season when you look at contracts. Everybody else have got a long-term contract or a fairly long-term contract, longer than just a single year. So it's really important that they've moved away really from that loan reliancy. And I wouldn't say Pompey have been an overly loan reliant side over the years, but they've certainly been more loan reliant than this summer. I think that we've seen a lot more free transfers, a lot more fees being paid, and this idea they want to create a long-term squad owned by Portsmouth Football Club, and that's really important when it comes to developing young players. They know these are their players, they can recoup fees, but also develop at the football club. Thirdly, when looking at the general thoughts on this strategy of bringing players in this summer, versatility and role variety. It's clear the majority of players recruited can play in multiple positions and roles across the team. For example, Gavin Whyte here, I think he's traditionally a left winger. We had him as a left winger for Oxford, but also played as a number 10 for Oxford and on the right and even through the middle. Once again, we look at the versatility with these players coming through the door. Poole, again, a great example, can play centre-back, probably will play right centre-back in the back four. We'll come on to that in more detail when we look at the Jack Hancock discussion later on. He can play at right back, he can play right wing back in some cases if they're going to look at maybe playing a back three. I doubt it, but even so, lots of areas across the defence can be played by Regan Poole. Another example can be Shaughnessy, can play at centre-back and play in defensive midfield. But age profile, I think a real idea of having a long-term squad owned by the football club, but also versatility and role variety within those players. Let's move on now to the squad depth and analyse the squad in its current form. So like I did with Derby County, I've created this squad depth graphic. You can see it on the screen right now. Key points straight away, very strong at fullback, players that can play in different roles. As mentioned just a second ago, you've got Ogilvie, Sparks and Hume, 3 different options at left back. Some can play more comfortably as an attacking option, some more as a more defensive option. At right back, similar. Swanson, Rafferty, again, some really good options in that position. And again, injury problems for both of those players over the last couple of years, but hopefully both can stay fit and push each other because they are 2 really good options there. Plenty of strikers and options up there as well. You can see that's the most strong when it comes to numbers. Bishop, Sadie, Yengi and Kamara. I know Kamara can play in different positions, and that's one thing I will say. I get that players can play in different areas. White can play on the left. Lane can play at central midfield if he wanted to in a bit more of an attacking position, or maybe even a number 10. Same with Lowry. You get the gist of it. This is a mock-up formation with players in each position. Ultimately, there can be changes and there can be shifts when it comes to, again, variety in roles. I'm intrigued to see how rotation's going to work, especially up front. Of course, Bishop will be the number 1 striker option, but where's the minutes going to come from Sadie and Yengi and even Kamara, who's joined alone from Norwich? You'd like to think that Norwich are going to send out players like Kamara knowing he's going to get minutes. When it comes to wide areas, they also look pretty good as well. Lots of different individual styles in that position. Lane, White, Scully and Vincent, who's done very well in pre-season. Midfield looks very flexible and interchangeable. Plenty of options. I would say there needs to be, and there is a real need for a goal-scoring and more advanced attacking midfielder here. It's quite a flat 3 right now. Very, very good when it comes to the defensive side of the game, but in terms of breaking the lines, and Jack Hancock will touch on it further in just a second, but in terms of a player in a midfield that can score goals and be a bit more goal scoring in that 3, they're lacking there. Lowry can play in that number 10, but definitely not as good as he is deeper. Same with Morel, a bit more advanced, but he's not a number 10. He's not an attacking midfielder. He's not your Tommy Lee, for example, who they have been linked to. You wouldn't play Marlon Pack in that position either. He's definitely a number 6. Stevenson can do that. Shaughnessy can also play in that role as well. Devlin, you'd say, is a bit more of a box-to-box, energetic option in that midfield, a bit more of an aggressive player in there. So, he's not your number 10. So, I look at creativity, I look at playmaking, that is slightly lacking. And when you do look at the squad depth, they're fine in numbers, but are they looking for somebody else who can be a bit more different and attack and give that goal output from midfield? You'd say that is definitely the case. Let's take a look and have a conversation, a really interesting conversation I recorded yesterday with Jack Hancock, and tactically break down what will this Pompey setup be. let's take a look at this. A really interesting listen and something that hopefully will provide Pompey fans and other fans watching this a real level. So I'm joined with Jack Hancock. Everybody on Twitter will know Jack Hancock right now in the League One Pompey scene, and I'm talking about taking the tactical insight to the next level. I thought, well, I can't do it on my own. Some would say I can't do it at all, but Jack can, and that's why we brought Jack in. Jack, thank you so much for coming on. We spoke about getting you on at some point last season, but this season, the rebuild is happening, and diving into exactly what this rebuild is all about on a tactical level, you fit the bill so right, mate. Thank you so much for coming on.
I should really hire you to do my PR because that was very, very good. Yeah, cheers for having me, mate. We've been talking for quite a while actually about getting me on the channel, so it's good to be here and chat in Pompey.
Yeah, and like you said, there's so much to speak about. We sort of last season we could touch on different subjects, but it was quite a negative feeling around Portsmouth. Now this season, like I said, I'll use the word again, the rebuild, the restructure, the complete clean slate that John Mousinho is going with when it comes to recruitment and the way that he wants to play is well and truly in full swing. And we're only in pre-season, and we can get a really good gist of what we could expect and what Pompey fans like yourself could expect as well. Let's speak about John Mousinho, the manager and the tactician. What is John Mousinho expected to be like when it comes to style of play? And again, what identity are we looking at? Because identity is a word that will be mentioned quite a lot in our conversation today. But what is the Mousinho style of play? What is that identity that you Pompey fans could expect this season?
To keep it pretty simple and pretty short, because I'm sure we'll get into the nuances and the specifics as we go along, but defensively solid football, and he looks to dominate the ball and looks to dominate the game, and not having possession for the sake of it, having meaningful possession and doing something with the ball. So yeah, if I was to sum it up, it would be just defensively solid, ball dominant football.
I mean, it's very different to the Kenny Jackett and the Danny Cowley type of way. It's very, very modernised. I think that's the word you used in your preview for the season, your article on that. Is a very, very modern style of play. And we'll come on later to the De Zerbi comparison that you like to make. I think that's definitely there. Again, maybe not quite to the level of De Zerbi quite yet. Let's be careful what we say, but elements of that style of play, we can certainly see that modern, again, high press, forward thinking, build up play in lots of attacking areas. That's the type of John Mousinho side that we expect. How important is player integration, Jack? Because there's been a lot of players come in, 12 players in total, 12 yesterday after the arrival of Schofield, the backup goalkeeper, but 11, I mean, it's actually not 11 outfield, is it? You brought in 2 goalkeepers, 10 outfield players, and
so that's a lot
goalkeepers. Quite a few. Player integration in this style of play in particular is really important. We're going to speak about the different phases of play in just a second, but again, player integration, how important is that when we speak about John Mousinho and this side he's trying to build? Because when you bring in that many players, his first ever pre-season as a manager, his first ever full season as a manager as well. It's a lot of things to do.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, we've signed 12 players, 2 goalies, 10 outfielders. And with the style of play in the way I see it and the way I think quite a lot of people see it, there's a lot of responsibility for the players, and they've got to be accountable and they'll be good. It's pretty simple. If they don't have a grasp of the system and the structures and their responsibilities, we will fail. It's that simple. So when integrating those players, it has to be done properly, and they have to understand the system, because if they don't understand the system, they shouldn't be playing. Because it's that simple. Because if they get it wrong, we're going to lose. It's as simple as that.
Identity going forward was the big talking point last season, especially under John Mousinho. And you'd argue with Danny Cowley as well, in it not really being there, especially when it started going quite badly for Danny Cowley. And even when John Mousinho came in and things did improve, identity and attacking identity was the issue. What can we see and what can we expect now with the likes of Scully, Whyte, Yengi, Sadie, Kamara? I think that's it. On top of Lane, Bishop. What can we expect? Because there are lots of new players coming in there, lots of players that have got different qualities, and they're Whyte a bit more of a direct winger, Scully somebody who can create and cut inside. You've got lots of, and Sadie's got a physical striker. Kamara we don't know too much about, but again is somebody who can play in that forward area. Something does need to change going forward. Something does need to happen to improve that identity, and so that you can really see like a real threatening Pompey team. What could that change be, and what could those players do to change that?
Yeah, I mean, last year the issue was, it was probably quality and to an extent coaching. In the players we had in the forward areas, they didn't have the output that we needed from them, and also maybe the coaching wasn't as good as it could have been. Whereas this year, we've signed forwards that all have brilliant quality. Some maybe more wild card options like Abu Kamara or Sini Yengi. They've got quality there. That's not up for debate. So if the goal scoring wasn't to improve this year, which it has to, defensively we're really good, we're really solid. That's fine. That doesn't really need to be touched. But if we don't improve in scoring goals this year, it's down to the coaching. The players we've got at our disposal, they're good enough to score lots of goals and create lots of goals. Whereas, is the coach up to standard? Let's see.
Yeah, and dealing with the attacking side of the game and playing against the low block, I think a lot of Pompey fans have shared their frustrations when it comes to players and managers and teams going to Fratton Park and playing, and again, even away from home, but especially at home as well, playing with an extra or quite a few men behind the ball, sitting deep, playing that low block. How do you attack that differently? Because that's been a big issue when it comes to Portsmouth over the last couple of years. I think really since you joined League One, that was a problem. And again, a player that can break the lines, a team really that can be a bit more creative and adventurous in the way they go forward. Is that what John Mousinho needs to really get going now with these players? Because last season, slightly blunt in those situations. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, it's probably our biggest issue is coming up against those low blocks, especially at Fratton Park, where the pitch is really small and really tight, which means you can't really use the wide areas and the midfield is really congested. So it's a bit of a pain, to be honest. I mean, we could sit here and make an entire video on how to beat a low block, but if I could summarise it and nail it down to a few points, Sparks and Swanson as a fullback is really important because they're technically secure. They're really good going forward. Also, got good recovery pace, which can limit counter attacks, especially Swanson. Maybe not as much Sparks. Another idea would be to really force the opposition back into our own box and then look for cutbacks from the edge of the box for the likes of Lane, Scully, Swanson to an extent. You look at Manchester City last year, Gundogan scored a few like that. Rodri scored the Champions League winning goal, I believe, like that. And another option would be high ball speed. In terms of when you are combining in those wide areas, you need to think quickly and you need to play quickly. So you can have those triangles that double up on defenders, and then you can play around them quickly rather than having that sluggish movement and just being a step behind and then not being able to break down that low block. So you go back around the other way, which it gets you nowhere really.
And that creative player that you mentioned there about being a bit more adventurous and trying things a little bit differently, that number 10 is probably the last element of that shopping list. I don't know, it's quite a long shopping list, isn't it? But in terms of...
It's a big shop. It's a big shop.
It is a big shop. You've gone all out. You've done the weekly shop. You need to do the season shop, really. Is that number 10 the next and the player that could be the difference? Because it's got to be the right player that fits. Tommy Lee has been mentioned. You've had other names that have been mentioned. Maybe the big loan signings, permanent signings. We don't quite know who it's going to be. It's quite up in the air. But whoever it is, how important is that number 10? Because it could change formation. And we're going to come on to whether a 4-3-3 or a 4-2-3-1 is better suited. But either way, having that number 10 that can be a little bit different and attack in different ways and bring other players into the game, whether that be the two behind him or maybe even the three in front of him, what is that number 10 needing to be if it's going to be successful?
Yeah, it's on my dogs are barking, paid extras. So, yeah, we've not really had a proper number 10 that plays week in, week out since Gary Roberts 6-7 years ago, and that's a real issue. We had Michael Jacobs recently, but he was never fit, so that wasn't really viable. And yeah, it's absolutely vital. And that's either a creative number 10 who can be a bit of a creative fulcrum and really drag the side forward, or a more attacking 8 that can score goals, maybe like a Jensen Weir. But yeah, Tino Andrin's been linked, although there is fitness concerns around him. And then maybe Jack Lancaster is also an option at Cambridge. But it's absolutely vital. We don't have either a goal scoring or a truly creative midfielder in the squad. I know Mousinho tried Tom Lowry in that position at the end of last season, but it didn't really work, and I didn't really like it. I don't think it gets best out of Tom. I think he gets the best out of the squad. So yeah, it's the last big name on the shopping list. Maybe they'll look for an extra winger or someone like that, but it's such an important signing.
What about transitions and build-up play through that midfield? And what is that favoured trio that John Mousinho you'd expect him to go with come the start of the season? He's tried lots of different elements and ways in pre-season, but what is that preferred 3? What is that looking like at the moment? You've got Morel, you've got Lowry, you've got now Devlin come in, you've got Marlon probably being that more preferred number 6. What is that favour 3? And is a double pivot the best way of going forward, or is Marlon Pat being that traditional 6 the way you want as that base of that 3?
That's a good question. I'll give you 2 different midfields for 2 different scenarios. If you want a midfield that can really control, it would be a midfield 3 as well at the moment, so I have that number 10. If you want a midfield 3 that can control games, dominate the ball, create chances, you're probably looking at Pack at the base and then Morel and Lowry ahead. If you want a midfield that's really good at counter-pressing and really good in the rest defence, which is essentially the structure behind the ball when you have possession, so it kind of snuffs out counter-attacks and wins transition moments, that counter-pressing trio would be Stevenson at the base and flanked by Morel on the left and Devlin on the right, because Devlin is such a good counter-presser and so good in transition. He's really got a really aggressive movement, and then when he gets the ball, he'll look forward immediately. So yeah, it depends what you're looking for, really. At the moment, I think it'll probably be a midfield 3 rather than a double pivot, but it'll be really indicative of if we sign an 8, so a goal scoring 8 like a Jensen Weir, it'll be a 4-3-3. If we sign a 10, it'll probably be a 4-2-3-1.
And what about build-ups then? What is that transition looking like in a midfield? And like you say there, without repeating yourself to an extent, is in particular Terry Devlin. You mentioned him about being one of the best players when it comes to transitions. Sort of in more detail, why is that? Why is he the best player in transition compared to the other players you would go with instead of him?
So we've got quite a few that are good in transition, but what I really like about Terry is that he's incredibly mobile. He's very athletic. He's got really aggressive movement. And by aggression, I don't mean he's going around kicking lumps out of people. I mean, he's not afraid to jump up to press and get in people's faces. And, it's all well and good winning the ball back, but then what do you do with it? So when he does win the ball back, he'll look forward and he'll play forward, which at times it can mean your play is a bit chaotic. So that's why maybe when we're winning a game, you don't want Terry on the pitch, because it can cause a bit too much chaos for the situation. Game state is so important. But if you want someone in transition who can eat up those duels and play forward, it is Terry Devlin for me.
And then defensively, what is that defence looking like? What is that back line of John Messinio looking like right now? And what is a John Messinio back line made up of? Again, personnel maybe slightly different. We don't quite know. You've got lots of options at centre-back. You've got now multiple options at full-back. But in whoever plays there, in general, what is our back line under John Messinio really looking like this season?
So last year, John Messinio, he liked his centre-backs to go man-to-man with the front line. He liked one centre-back to be, maybe it's indicative of what he had at his disposal last year, but he tended to have one centre-back who was really aerially dominant, so normally Sean Raggett, and then one that was a bit more of a ball player, so a Deshaun Bernard or Clark Robertson, or I'd say Riley Towler, but he's not perfect. So yeah, he likes his centre-backs to go man-to-man and be quite aggressive and forward-thinking. It's kind of hard to tell what his ideal back four will be, because last season we had so many injuries in that area. Swanson missed, I think, 20 consecutive games. Deshaun Bernard had quite a few injuries. What else was there? Clark Robertson had loads of injuries. So this year, I'd probably expect it to start. It'll be a back four with Sparks at left back. Sparks will be at left back, depending on the game. Centre back partnership with Shaughnessy, or Shocknessy rather, and Poole. And then probably Swanson at right back, because then you've got a real blend of technical security, ball playing ability, and also you've got players that can be aerially dominant and defend 1v1.
And then the goalkeeper, another player, another position in which you have strengthened. Norris has come in. I think a lot of people, when they saw Norris being out, were a little bit confused or a little bit concerned about. We know the way Messinio wants his goalkeeper to be. If you're going to play that style, you need a goalkeeper that's very modern and happy and comfortable in possession, a bit more of a sweeper keeper, if you like, if you're going to use the terminology like that. Somebody who is very, very comfortable with the ball at his feet, very, very quite high in terms of being comfortable in and around his penalty area, not being that traditional on-the-line type of keeper. Again, Norris, is he that, first and foremost? And how are your feelings around Norris being that number one goalkeeper? Because it looks as though he will be the goalkeeper that starts behind that back four. Question marks are there. Jack, what do you say now?
Yeah, I mean, it's always important to admit when you're wrong and admit, when you learn new information, when you grow. So when Will Norris signed, I was very apprehensive, and I did a thread on it, and I said he was a solid shot stopper, but I wasn't convinced by him in possession. because so far I hadn't seen that from him. I hadn't seen that willingness to play the ball and be part of that, situational back three where he just splits the centre back and sits really high, as you said. Whereas, from what I've seen so far, I'm really wrong with that. In pre-season, he's been very willing to take the ball and be the controller in the middle of that three. He reminds me, actually, I'm sure we might get onto it with the De Zerbi comparisons, but Jason Steele, I'm not comparing quality at all, by the way, but in terms of, the way, stylistically, they play quite similarly in that, they're both very comfortable with the ball. They're looking for those first-line passes and second-line passes. Norris's pass quality hasn't always been perfect, but sometimes it's too heavy or a bit too light. But I'll put that down to pre-season. We've still got 10 days until the season starts. I'm not very good at maths, so you might have to correct me on that one. But yeah, I'm really happy with Norris. Obviously, the season's not started yet. It could go really badly from there, or he might skyrocket and do it even better.
So, Pompey fans, how are we feeling? Hopefully you did enjoy it. Let me know in the comment section down below your thoughts ahead of this new campaign. Like I said at the start, how are those confidence levels? Are they high? Are they low? I'm intrigued. I'll be replying and responding to all of those as well. Another big thank you to Jack for coming on and giving us that tactical insight. Always looking to take the tactical side of the game to the next level, and Jack Hancock is smashing it right now. So thank you so much to him for coming on. We'll definitely look at bringing him on in the future once again. Until next time, I've been Jack. Please make sure you subscribe and leave a like, and I will see you all very, very soon. Take care.